Colorado Radio for Justice brings you up to the minute news and conversation around the criminal legal system in Colorado and beyond. Welcome to Up to the Minute.
Hi, Ryan Conroe here from the Colorado Radio for Justice team. An update before this episode of Up to the Minute starts. On Friday, May 16th, shortly after this interview was taped, Governor Jared Polis vetoed HB 25-1147, the bill called Fairness and Transparency in Municipal Court. We've opted to leave the conversation about the bill in the episode to share reflections from the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition on the merits of the bill and on what may happen next now that the bill has been vetoed. And now, on to today's episode.
Welcome to Up to the Minute with Colorado Radio for Justice. I am your host, Tiffany McCoy.
And I'm co-host Trevor Jones, and today we are here with Kyle Giddings from the CCJRC, and we're going to speak with him today about the legislative wrap-up and where we've landed so far in the year and what might come next.
How are you today, Kyle?
I'm good. Just glad to be here and glad for a session to be over. A lot happened this year. A real mixed bag, honestly, of things happened at the legislature. So I'm glad and excited to be here to talk to you guys about it all.
Should we start with maybe what are some of the highlights and the lowlights of this session?
For sure. So some of the highlights, the Colorado Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law yesterday. Very exciting. So for the first time in our nation's history, we've created a protected class for voters that are incarcerated. So they have legal remedies to seek resolution through the law if they are denied access to the ballot or information about what's on the ballot, as well as the ability to register to vote. So that was a really big win, just kind of building on our voting rights work here in Colorado. We also passed Senate Bill 190, which was the compassionate release special needs parole reform. So it fixed the medical definitions that were in statute, adjusted some of the ages around eligibility. So lowering it to 55, as long as you've served 25% of your sentence, you would be potentially eligible for special needs parole as long as you fell into all the medical criteria as well. And so hopefully that will make it to where folks can get out a lot easier. Right now, it's really difficult to get special needs parole, even if you're on your deathbed inside of the Department of Corrections. A few other things, the right to visitation within the Department of Corrections bill passed and is sitting on the governor's desk waiting to be signed, and all indications say that he will sign it. Eliminating medical copays inside of the Department of Corrections too. So no more $3 copays or $5 copays or none of that. So that is sitting on the governor's desk as well as some muni level reforms. So the passage of Senate Bill 62, which stopped municipalities from taking people's failure to appear and turning it into a contempt of court charge. And then suddenly they are serving sometimes upwards of 500 days for a crime that never even had jail time originally eligible for, as well as 1147. Now, the fight is still going for 1147. We're still out there pushing the governor and urging him to sign the bill to make sure that municipalities just can't have sentences that are worse than the state level. I talked about it here last time, but you shouldn't depend on what side of the street you're on if you get 7 days or 364 days. It should be standard across the board. Some lowlights. Our prison utilization bill that would have helped with the issue of short-timers, people going in for only a few months, really, unfortunately died on the House calendar. The governor put a lot of pressure on the majority leader to not let it come up for debate. We had the votes in the House and the Senate to pass it, but because of the veto threat, it never made it out. So that was the only bill introduced this year that would have decreased the prison population, and it didn't move forward. It also had $20 million worth of savings, and $3 million of that would have gone to wages programs across the state. And so it was really heartbreaking. It was a really hard fought.
And what is Wages program?
Yeah, so the Wages program is the reentry program for people leaving prison to work on job training, housing, mental health, There's so many, and you usually can access the Wages program through your parole office or as well as community partners throughout the state. And the community partners are like local organizations in that community, usually led, what our experience has shown is usually led by formerly incarcerated people who get what you need to like make it and succeed after leaving prison. So that program has had a lot of success. So it was really disappointing to see that it lost this money, this opportunity. So,
what might have been the justification that someone would have had to discourage this bill from going forward or to oppose it in general?
we're seeing an increase of the return to tough on crime narrative, really rushing back to the forefront of a lot of people's minds, as well as a lot of the folks up at the legislature. And so, originally the governor indicated this was soft on crime, and so he was not interested in signing it. Once we explained that, like, these people aren't like just getting out willy-nilly, like they actually, the reason why they are short-termers is because they've already served a majority of their sentence in community, and they're just had a revocation, got sent to prison. And by the time you get your pretrial confinement time, by the time you get your earned time from the halfway house, or in some cases with probation at all, they just had really short sentences, and they clog up the system. DOC can't get them programs because they're only there for a little bit of time. And most of the time they're showing up well past their parole eligibility date. And so they have to set a parole date, and it just causes mayhem within the system. But that just wasn't a good enough argument for the governor. And so we're going to come back and we're going to push forward with it, because we know the data from the nonpartisan office at the Ledge Council show that this would decrease the prison population pretty significantly. This 13% of folks that end up in prison on these short sentences would have an alternative way out. So the bill would have triggered a 35B reconsideration. And we're hoping next year that we will come and be able to get that bill across the finish line.
I'm pretty surprised at such a high percentage of people that are incarcerated or serving state prison time for such a short amount of time. So those were those the only two, the municipality one and then the prison population reduction that are kind of still, or well, one of them died and one of them's kind of floating?
We are under the impression that all the other good ones will be signed. Those are the only two, one being dead and the other one being under threat of veto, that we are aware of right now. Though we'll see. This governor loves to change his mind as quickly as he makes it. So we'll see what happens.
On a more personal, let's kind of get to know Kyle Giddings level. Was there one that you felt most strongly about? And was there a reason why for that? Or
oh man, gosh, having to choose one.
You can choose more than one.
Okay, thank goodness. My heart and soul is always voting rights and re-enfranchising everyone in the system one day, no matter if you're in a probation program or if you are in Centennial. Like, you should have your voice heard in your community, because 95% of people in prison are going to go home one day, and they should be able to have a voice in what is happening in their neighborhoods, what's happening in their communities, who's running the school board. I think it's 80% of women in prison have children, and so they should be able to have a say in what's happening in education, just like, and fathers as well. So the Voting Rights Act, I think, is a really good step in that direction. We're slowly building the playing field to show that voting inside of prisons is a thing that could happen if we just put the effort into making it happen. In Colorado, we would have to pass a constitutional amendment to delete the word felony in the Constitution when it comes to voting restrictions. But that's only 50 plus 1. To get it passed. So I have a lot of hope that one day that we'll get it done. But I also really cared about the visitation rights. I really cared about the making standard sentencing across the state with like 1147. And then there was like I was really passionate about defeating Senate Bill 44, which did get defeated, which was the increase on penalties on fentanyl possession. But now it's a ballot initiative. They turned around and made it worse, believe it or not, and put it on the ballot. And so that's a new fight that we're going to have to face. But we're also seeing a lot of attempts to increase penalties this year for the first time in a long time. There's always someone out there trying to increase the penalty on something. But this year is bipartisan, very bipartisan, with people trying to increase the different kinds of crimes that would you qualify for possession of a weapon by a previous offender, adding like auto theft to that. That was successful. It passed. And so if you are convicted of auto theft in your past and then later have a felony, have a gun and you're caught with that, that is a felony as well. Not all crimes restrict your Second Amendment rights, but they're just adding more and more to it that will. There was a few other ones I made some notes of. Increased penalties around careless driving, making it to where you could be charged with multiple felonies if multiple people get hurt. Right now it's a class 1 misdemeanor. Luckily, they were able to negotiate it down to keep it at a class 1 misdemeanor, but allowing multiple class 1 misdemeanors to be charged. And then penalties for theft of a firearm is now a felony. Right now, before this bill, it was just based on the value of the gun, but now any gun will be a felony. And so we're just seeing this uptick starting to come through at the legislature, that we will do everything we can moving forward to water down or defeat a lot of these bad laws that come through the legislature. But the reality is the landscape is shifting so much that now it's bipartisan, so we can't stop them all. Previously, it was all one side of the aisle bringing all the bad criminal justice bills, but now it's like very diverse and very open. But one big win that we did have this session was around the juvenile bed caps. So the DAs came wanting to increase the amount of beds that juvenile detention centers could have across the state, as well as put it in an equation into the law, allowing them to like perpetually grow that bed count. Like the Department of Corrections right now has an equation that determines how many beds they need. The DAs and the juvenile bed caps don't have that. And because of an organized coalition, an opposition to it, and the negotiations, it turned out quite beautifully, actually, way better than any of us thought it would. They were able to stop the increase of bed caps, stop the ability for them to put an equation for the bed cap to keep growing perpetually. And they were actually able to shift the money that was supposed to pay for these beds into youth deflection programs. And so to help kids just stay out of jail, stay out of the detention centers. And so it was $9 million. Like, it's a serious chunk of change. So it was so great to see this like really awful bill be struck down and manipulated and changed into a really great bill. So that was a really good win this year for sure.
I have a question about the ballot initiative versus elected representative legislative process. If there is a piece of legislation already in place, signed into law by the governor, can a ballot initiative, if passed by voters, supersede a law that was legislatively passed?
Yeah, so Colorado has a very unique ballot initiative process. Not many states are like us, where it's really easy for citizens to initiate a ballot initiative. A lot of states like Florida, they were trying to get a ballot. They did get a ballot initiative on the ballot last year, and they had to have 1.8 million people sign this petition. In Colorado, it's 145,000. It's like nothing to get a ballot initiative onto the ballot. And so if, say, we pass a law saying that all grocery stores must carry a certain kind of pizza one day, and the next year, a group of citizens are like, no, they should carry only this kind of pizza. They can write up a ballot initiative proposal, put it before the Ledge Council and Title Board, and go through the process to get it approved, to show up on the ballot, that like wall of text. And they pass it saying it can only be pepperoni, not just only cheese. That supersedes it, and it deletes the old law and puts in a new law. So that's why we think Advance Colorado, these folks that are doing this work, are doing it this way, because they realize at the legislature they can't get these big tough on crime stuff through. They can't there's not enough votes for it, and there's enough stopgaps to stop the really bad stuff from even making it onto the House or Senate floor. And so what they're doing is they propose a bill like Senate Bill 44, all the sentencing reform around fentanyl, hold this big grandiose committee hearing where they have all these people come testify knowing that bill's going to die. But then it dies, and then they can turn around and be like, see, the Colorado legislature is failing to show up, so we're going to put it on the ballot. And that's their new strategy. They just circumvent the legislative process. They make a show of it and then throw it on the ballot.
If a proposition is passed and becomes law, constitutional law in Colorado, are the remedies beyond legislative or gubernatorial to hopefully maybe fix or otherwise correct it?
Totally. So I think about Prop 128 last year, which was the truth in sentencing around certain violent crimes, have to serve 85%. There's two kinds of laws that can pass on a ballot. There's statutory, which is like what most of the folks over there at the Capitol are writing, is all statutory. And then there's constitutional, which has a much higher threshold to be able to be put into the Constitution. You have to get like 60+% of the vote. Statutory is only 50+1 though. And so they're usually going off only doing statutory. It's very rare that they do constitutional stuff. They try to do it like this past year. They try to do it around school choice, constitutional right to school choice. It failed, but they try to do it. So because it's statute, there is an ability for the legislature to come back at a later date and change it. So right now we have truth in sentencing on certain violent crimes. But in 5 to or more years, if the political appetite is that people don't want to see that, the legislature can come in and change it. It's really hard to do that when something passes on a ballot, though, especially when Prop 128 passed by like 62 or 63%. So that's like a really hard thing to come back and change. And unfortunately, even if we came back and changed it, there's the Ramirez decision on the Colorado Supreme Court, which means people can't be resentenced. There's no retroactive applying the law change. So luckily it's a lot of statutory changes that hopefully the political winds will change and we'll be able to change one day.
So we're here at the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, and I just wonder, what does it look like here now after the legislative session is over?
Well, like today we were eating some tamales. I had some Oreos and just like emotionally eating. But right now we're just getting ready for the potential of these really bad Denver ballot initiatives that would make mandatory minimums of over 180 days for a third offense for theft over $100 within 5 years. So like, it's awful. And then mandatory minimums of up to of 30 days for things like urinating in public or defacing public property, which not only crosses over into unhoused folks, but also into protesters. It's kind of a protest crime too. It's an easy way for people to lock up folks who might slap a sticker on something and be charged with defacing public property. So really scary stuff. But, we're also working on building an alliance and building deeper roots with our folks who are fighting the really bad immigration stuff coming down. It's become clear this past, feels like 70 years, but 5 months of 2025, that it's really important that these alliances be built because it's clear that It is not just, we can't sit in our individual camps anymore. Like, the stakes are way too high with the bad stuff that's coming down from the federal government as well as at a local level, that we have to be united. And make sure our messaging is the same, and to make sure that our strategy is like conferred amongst all of us, and that we go forth as a united front. So right now we're just building a lot of coalition and getting ready for whatever comes down from the federal government, because it's different every single day. But also to rebuttal Advance Colorado here in Colorado, because this is just they're just the local love version of the chaos that the federal government has right now. So that's what we do. We're going to throw a party, though. So we'll make sure you're invited. Hit me up if you hear this. It's going to be May 30th, the throw party for the celebration of the passing of the Colorado Voting Rights Act. We're throwing a party right here in this building, and it's going to be great. I'll make sure you guys get an invite.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want an invite, my email's kyle@ccjrc.org.
Okay.
What argument might there be to support the use of the ballot initiative to affect judicial change or criminal justice change, rather than rely on legislators to do so?
Yeah. I think there is opportunity there to get some really good criminal justice reform through on the ballot. But I don't think the opportunity is right now, unfortunately. I think the political headwinds are against us right now in reform. We had some real good glory years from 2020 to 2024, where we, after the murder of George Floyd, the appetite was very strong to do some real reform and some real changes. We got a lot done in that time. But as a dear friend once described it to me, we got to convince the squishy folks at the Capitol who think, oh, I changed the law so no one should ever break the law again, that people are still going to break the law. Like, even though we reformed to make it better, there's always going to be someone there breaking the law. And that doesn't mean we should react in a way that's, let's reverse the law now. We're seeing that starting to happen. They're like, well, this person still broke the law, so we should reverse course and like undo all the progress. We're like, no, look at everyone who like was able to succeed because of the reforms. And right now, the political appetite nationally is just not that. I just saw yesterday about how violent crime has decreased by 58% in Denver specifically, and 35% in Aurora. But the media narrative, you would never know that. Never know that.
Those numbers are pretty shocking, to be
Pretty
honest.
shocking. Yeah.
That's huge that it's decreased that much in Denver and in Aurora. Yeah,
we're coming off of the COVID high of the crime increase. Overall crime is down everywhere. And so we got to work really hard to share that narrative and make sure people know that there is an alternative world than that proposed by Advance Colorado. That locking up our brothers and sisters doesn't make sense. At the legislature this year, I didn't even talk about DOC budget. That was a wild ride too. There was the joint budget committee person who does the analysis on the DOC budget said, what is the purpose of minimum security prisons? If there's a prison that doesn't have a fence around it, why are they in there? Like, they should be out in community. They should be at a halfway house, a sober living community, some other, like, we spend $56,000 a year incarcerating one person in a building that doesn't have a fence even, because they're so low risk to community. The political pendulum swings back and forth always. Right now, it is up, I think, towards the peak of really tough on crime, and it's going to start swinging back the other way. But we got to survive that swing. We got to survive that swing and make sure the good work that's been done doesn't get knocked down and taken away from us.
So I am interested. It seems like it makes sense to me. Like, if there's a prison without a fence, why do people need to be there? So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. And there are how many? Remind me again.
Currently, I believe there's 3 level 1 facilities in the state of Colorado. That would be Skyline, or the Beacon at Skyline, Rifle, and Delta. And I know there's recently been talk about trying to close at least one of them, if not several of them. And I think the budget may have a lot to do with that.
So there's these facilities, all men's facilities that are like open campus in some, like Skyline, which was the one that was being threatened to be closed, which did not get closed because of the work of the families of those who are at Skyline. We were able to save Skyline this year because of what an amazing program it is. And the best part is the chair of the Joint Budget Committee said, I want to be very clear, there's no path to close Skyline unless if you can prove you can recreate Skyline somewhere else. And because they were saying, well, we'll just close down Skyline and move them to Delta. And it's like, first of all, that's a huge move. Second of all, if the staff at Delta aren't bought in, like Skyline doesn't work, because that's part of the magic of Skyline and the Beaconette, is that the staff are bought in. They're all in on this program. But yeah, a bipartisan, or nonpartisan, not even bipartisan, nonpartisan JBC staff member said, who does the ballot analysis, said, why do we have minimum security prisons? The purpose of the Department of Corrections is to keep people locked up. And the Department of Corrections is quite good at that. And so he asked the question, if they are in a facility that doesn't have a fence, is that serving the purpose of what we should be doing? And it spurred this like awesome conversation amongst a lot of the JBC members who like had some like real conversations about like the Department of Corrections budget is crazy. It where everybody else got slashed this year, they went up. And they were just having the real conversations like, is this a place where we can actually save money then? So there was like a real philosophical conversation. It was weird. We were sitting there listening to it. And it's like, did the entirety of Joint Budget Committee just become like abolitionists? Like they're like, let's just close prisons. Like, unfortunately, it was about a 10-minute conversation and that was it. But I think it like started sparking some real thoughts of some people that have some real ideas. And we were like, hey, we're here. Like whenever anybody wants to talk about like how to reform prisons, like we've been doing it for a little while and we're happy to talk with any of you. And so we'll see what comes next year. We're still trying to figure out what the next bill is. I think we're going to be shifting from doing multiple bills to probably 1 or 2 bills. That way all of our effort is put into genuine reforms while we're out there fighting the ballot initiatives too.
Well, thank you for your time today, Kyle.
Yeah.
As always. Going forward, are there a couple things that we should be paying attention to going into the summer? Or should we just take a summer break and relax?
Oh, God, I wish. I so wish. I think, just keep tuning into Colorado Radio for Justice to hear about what is going on the ballot. There's going to be a ton coming down even this year. And so we'll be curious to see what happens. And if things don't work out and things don't come down the way we want them to this year, how do we move forward? And how do we respond properly? What were the lessons learned? So I'll be here all summer long, at least in air conditioning. And I will let you guys know what's going on and what we can do next.
Thank you for joining us here today on Up to the Minute with Colorado Radio for Justice. I am your host, Tiffany McCoy.
And I'm Trevor Jones, and we are very grateful for Kyle's time and for the work of the CCJRC and their willingness to speak with us today.
Once again, an update from the Colorado Radio for Justice team. Shortly after this interview was recorded, last Friday, May 16th, Governor Polis vetoed HB 251147, the Fairness and Transparency in Municipal Court bill. We'll pick up conversation about this and other legislation in our next episode of Up to the Minute.
Up to the Minute is a production of Colorado Radio for Justice. Tune into our